Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our weekly office hours. My name is George Soto, one of the co-founders here at AssetMule, joined by my co-founder and CEO, Justin Dorfman. And I just got to say, I'm always pretty excited, but I'm a little extra excited here for this week's guest and the insights that we're going to dive into, which is really centered around competitive positioning and buyer enablement. And Talya Heller is an amazing human being. We've been really collaborating. Talia, would you say over the last like 2 years or so, you've provided a lot of great insight around what we've been working on at AssetMule and how it relates to product marketing, but you've also collaborated on a lot of content and things like that. So we're really, really grateful for your time today. For the folks real quick out there who are tuning in, you're probably watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, just go ahead and add them to the comments section. I'll go ahead and start to monitor those things, and we'll add your questions throughout this session. But we'll certainly leave time here at the end for a Q&A. So without further ado, real quick, Talya, why don't you just tell folks a little bit about your background and how you become really an expert product marketer here, sharing tremendous insights, certainly around competitive positioning, but also other topics like buyer enablement and so on.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for the vote of confidence of having me live unedited. Really appreciate being with you guys. Definitely two of my favorite people in SaaS and in product marketing specifically. So I've been in product marketing for, gosh, like I don't know how many years now, but before then I had a few stints in product. I started as a PMO, but I kind of landed in product marketing. I feel like kind of like the joint theme across all these roles that I've had was that they were always very cross-functional. I think product marketing is for sure the one that these cross-functional skills or collaboration skills is probably the role when it's the most important. And I started kind of sharing my, I don't know about expertise, but just my experience. And I started posting on LinkedIn about 2 years ago, probably a little less than that. And I was just, happy that my past experience and my learnings make sense to people, resonate, make people want to learn more and have like a good discussion around these things. I'm literally just sharing, like my learnings from all the years of been doing that, like been doing product marketing and all the experience that I've been leaning on. So really fun to, be in with a group of people that actually like this makes sense to, because at home when I talk about it, like everyone just looks at me like, what?
Awesome. Well, I've been enjoying your content for some time, both the product marketing stuff, but I also was excited to see you making a cameo on Stephen his awesome videos. So that was really cool. But let's dive into some of these topics. I'm really interested to get your perspective on some things. And obviously, I want to start with positioning because I think for product marketing purists, this is the core of everything that we do in product marketing. And I actually saw, I don't know if you saw, but Scott Brinker's, he does those marketing landscape posts, and every market it seems is becoming increasingly crowded, right? I think his latest image almost looks like pixels with the amount of logos that are on there. Mm-hmm. So, as we think about positioning, I'm curious if you have any advice or feedback on how do you approach positioning in a world where every market seems like it's incredibly crowded and, every solution seems like it's the same thing or offers the same value. What's your approach to positioning in such a world?
Yeah, so exactly. So I think there was a time in SaaS where, companies could just kind of come up with some super catchy, cool sounding positioning statement, and was like, yeah, this is great. This is gonna convert website traffic, and we're gonna get traction, and we're gonna put that tagline on a banner in a conference, and everyone's gonna come, and that's gonna be amazing. But I feel like, this is obviously not working anymore, because as you pointed out, everyone sounds exactly the same. And it's so, in like every possible category is so crowded right now. So I really do think that the best way to address that is to really, and I'm sorry in advance if this is like a disappointment to anyone who's tuning in. It's really about the foundations of marketing and of product marketing. Like, you have to know your audience, you have to know who you're talking to. Don't assume like you're talking to, every company in North America with more than 500 employees, because that's not specific at all. So knowing who actually finds the most value in what you're selling and really leaning there is kind of the key. And I think using those other alternatives or competitors or competing approaches even as kind of an anchor is actually, like, I kind of see that as almost like a hack, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we can't keep marketing to people and like pretend that they don't know anything else. And we can just say, oh, it's like the best blah blah. It's like, or like more than blah blah. Like, it's not enough. Everyone compares you automatically to like 5 other different options at least, and that's yours. Like, that should be your like assumption when you start. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. First of all, when when you know what everyone else is saying, you can literally take that and say, okay, I want to say the opposite of that. Like, first of all, like, if you want to stand out, like, know where, like where everyone else is going, and use that to kind of, like, reframe. But also, you can use the fact that they know the market, that they know what else is out there, to really explain and just like narrow in on the one thing that makes you truly different. And notice I'm saying different. I'm not saying better. I'm not saying faster. I'm not saying any of these things. I'm just saying different, and different again in their perspective. So how does that make me? So, like, for example, like with AssetMule, right? So like, how does AssetMule make me do my job better? If I'm a product marketer, or, like if I'm in sales enablement, and now I have to like translate all of my messaging to like super specific, personalized, like sales assets. And how do I do that in a way that makes sense to your ICP, basically? So definitely use other things that they know, right? So, it can be like another company that does kind of something similar, but again, like, you're like really leaning into like the one difference that actually make people choose you versus them. And you probably like have some examples, or like you've done some customer discovery or like interviews, so you can like take from that. But also, again, like, don't like I say it's a hack because it kind of allows you to kind of cut to the chase, right? So like, you don't have to explain the entire thing. They already know the thing. You just need to lean into what makes you different and what makes your ICP choose you. And hopefully you're talking to more people from your ICP, and not just to like random people with random use cases that you don't actually serve really well. So when you lean into that, like to being like super specific, that actually, that actually helps your audience see themselves inside what you're saying.
I love this for so many reasons, Talya. And one of the things that I love about it is like, that's part of our message, which is like, let's stop sending generic stuff, right? And things like that, because that's just not going to cut it. But I'm not going to pitch our value proposition. I wanted to also sort of comment that for the folks out there, like, you just cannot phone it in anymore, right?
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting everyone does that, obviously, but like, in 20 something years, like, I've met very few people who actually like embody their message, embody the mission of the product, who you can like walk up to and ask, hey, tell me about your space and your business and all that, and they just know it at a level of mastery that is just clearly different. And it's not just the, you know, sort of obvious tagline that you see on the website or whatever, right, that they've sort of just kind of absorbed because they went through onboarding, but they truly care and are passionate and understand this. So, you know, for the folks out there, we talk a lot about this concept on the sales side, which is like you have to be the expert, right? You just have to be. You can't just do, you know, like you know, superficial stuff anymore. So that's kind of what I hear, you know, when you say these things. And we now, as product marketers, again, have to be experts. And if we're not experts at this as a product marketer, I'm not sure. Gosh, I don't know who is, right? Quick question. You know, actually, we got a question from the audience here. Maybe we can dive in real quick from Heather. If you could ask just one question in a customer or prospect interview, so that customer discovery stuff out there, to uncover our real competitive advantage, what would that question be? Anything that comes to mind here?
I mean, I'm a very straight shooter. So I really do think that, you know, when you have a chance, and like when I work with clients, and sometimes I can talk to their customers and sometimes I can't. So I talk to customer facing teams because I feel like, you know, like these people are always in front of those prospects. I kind of ask them two things. So, you know, the first one would be like, what, you know, like what, when you talk to a prospect, or when you talk to like a new client that you're just gonna like start onboarding or something like that, like what makes you think that they're gonna be like a good customer? And that's kind of like a different way of asking them, what's your ICP? And it's super open-ended on purpose, because, you know, you would be really surprised by what type of insights people who talk to prospects and customers all day, every day, would bring up to that question. And then the other thing, like if you're talking to the customer directly, is like really just like ask straight up, like you have, you know, like you have, I'm sure you're like, you know, like you started from this, like that was kind of like your status quo. You talk to other companies, to other vendors, what made you choose this one? Or like, what made you choose us? And again, like, I don't anchor it around like a specific feature or around like a specific product related thing necessarily. It's super open-ended on purpose. And sometimes like the answer would be, you know, your sales team was the only one that actually felt like they know what they're talking about, and that like they didn't give us a super superficial demo. Like that is something that I actually heard. Or another, you know, like some other ones might actually call out some super specific product things that came up, or, you know, and it could be anything else that make you as a company like stand out in a way that made them feel like you're going to be a good partner and you're going to help them get from point A to point B and solve that thing that they're trying to solve. And that could be because you did have that like market expertise and like a super sharp POV of the market, or you made them see things differently, or it might be a product feature, or it might be that onboarding process. Like it could be a bazillion different things. But I think the more open-ended those questions are at the beginning of the conversation, you get like more interesting threads to pull on that you didn't necessarily think would be like potential things to ask.
Yeah, I think that's such a amazing insight. And what I've found is when you ask that question to a lot of different customers, you start to see those trends, right? Like, why did you choose us over the other solutions that you were exploring? And seeing that common response to that of, well, it was your sales team that were super on point. They know us in and out. They know our challenges every day. you hear that 3 or 4 times, 10 times, that's something that you want to start embedding in your messaging, right? And really helping that buyer that lands on your website understand, why you're different and what they can expect that's different about their buying experience with you, right? So I agree. I think that question is a really great one, but definitely to keep it open-ended, because then you won't lead them in a certain direction. You'll get the honest truth, right? Which I think is really, really important.
And they might call out something about you, but they might also call out something about themselves, right? So like maybe it was like a super specific timing, and that person or the sales rep or that ad just said something that was really top of mind. And again, like that can uncover like just more insight about like your ICP. Could potentially uncover, more use cases or like more ways of them like thinking about like how to use a product or like how your product solves something that they're really finding challenging. So again, like, I mean, if I would give just like one advice is like really like don't be afraid or like worried about asking a super, super open-ended question. And I even call it out. I'm like, this is open-ended on purpose. Like you just start talking and like, don't feel like you have to keep your answer to like 2 minutes or less. Like, no, like this isn't a job interview. Like, no, talk. Like, feel free to go on tangents. Like if something crosses your mind, just like say it. And I think that's like another thing of kind of creating that this is like a safe space. like this is for you to talk what's on your mind. I don't want you to talk about what you think I want to hear, because this isn't about me. You're the hero of the story here.
For sure. I want to ask you a question about sales assets as well. Obviously, we're interested in sales assets, but I've seen you talk about it on LinkedIn, and I think we've connected on some viewpoints around that. And one in particular is this challenge that I think a lot of product marketers face, which is they spend all this time building these sales assets, doing all the research, working with designers, and then they collect dust, right? They never get used. And I'm curious to get your perspective on why you think that is. Why aren't salespeople using the sales assets we're creating for them? And perhaps what can product marketers do differently that can lead to a greater usage of those sales assets?
Yeah, so this is a fun question. So I think, first of all, like number one thing that I think is going to be really valuable for any product marketer who's trying to like wrap their head around that, like, okay, like you're now in charge of like creating the sales deck. Great. Know how your sales team sell. Like if they sell in Challenger, that's something, that's something to keep in mind. If they're selling in a whole different method, that's, like another thing to keep in mind, but like know how they sell. And like understand kind of like also from the other side of that, but it's truly like the other side of the same coin. Also like really understand like the buyer's journey, right? Like how many people are involved, like in the decision, like who usually makes that decision, who's the buyer, who's the decision maker, does someone else from the organization has to sign off that thing? Like there are so many other things that fall into play here that I think like truly help you. Like if you take the time and you really again, like cliche, but like become an expert in your customers' world and like in the market, and that will make that a lot easier. And then another thing, like sorry to disappoint if it's not like a super flashy AI type of thing, but like talk to your sales team all the time. You have to talk to them. You have to know, and you don't have to talk to all of them. I mean, yeah, that can be like quite literally impossible, but find like the one or two, sales BFFs that you want to have, folks that you want to talk to on a regular basis. This is a tip that I got very early in my product marketing career that I really do think that kind of like really changed the way I approach things. And then your sales team is also going to tell you why they're not using your sales deck. So like once you have that relationship, they're not going to be scared to tell you things like, and this is like, these are things that I heard from actual salespeople, And no marketer wants to hear that, but it's better to hear them than to not. But it's like, yeah, like I don't use that slide deck because it doesn't add value in the buying cycle, or like no one talks like that. Like I don't even want to like read these like these things out loud. Like it doesn't sound natural. No one talks like that. Not me, not the buyer. Like this is just like like they kind of get what you were going for, but like they don't even feel comfortable repeating the words. So like that's a pretty strong signal that like you're not, that like you're not creating something that they actually find that is valuable. And if you do have those conversations with them on a regular basis, you can start to understand the world and what they do find valuable, and what their like the prospects find valuable too. And again, like just like really lean into that. So if they have to, like if there is a specific person or role that is involved in the buying cycle that may not be on the sales calls, but at the end of the day has to sign the check, you got to address what they care about. You have to make sure that in some shape or form, and it doesn't matter if it's like in the slides or in a leave behind or in a one page, like it doesn't matter where, but you have to make sure that you're addressing those things. Or, if, for example, like if something like migration or implementation is something that's really top of mind, mention that. Like find a way to have it be part of your story and part of the story that you're telling, because once you are a lot more mindful of these things and you start to bringing them into the sales collateral that you're creating, you're giving your sales teams like a reason to use what you're working on. If they don't have a reason to use that and they think they'll do better without it, then they just won't. And I think us in product marketing, we might be sometimes a little too far removed from that world, but we need to also have kind of like a little empathy for our sellers too, because every action that they do is, in theory, at least recorded in some CRM or in some shape or form. Every conversation they have, every email they send, every asset that they share. And if, again, like if they are not gonna be confident that what you're giving them is gonna help them close, that's how they get paid. They're not gonna use it if they don't think it's gonna help them get paid. They need to close. Like that's it. This is like, that's what they care about. That's the paycheck that they get at the end of the month. So you have to be super mindful of these things that will actually help them to move the deal forward, and not just creating slides because you saw that in some, I don't know, like some other example, or you have it in a template, or it worked for you like 7 years ago. It's like let go of ego, let go of the past. Like just be super, super intentional about what you're actually putting out there.
Awesome. I love that. And I can't help but think that like I'm talking to a salesperson right now in what you're saying, because like that level of granularity, understanding the buying committee and all that sort of stuff, like that's what we as a sales professional are trained to focus on, right? And I think one of the big distinctions between sales and marketing, right, just for the folks out there, and I know we all know this, but I think it's worth sort of articulating, is the idea that as a salesperson, I am out there engaging within a one-to-one capacity, and as a marketing function, like I am generally focused on one-to-many and building brand, and these these kind of air cover sort of reinforcing functions, right? I know there's ABM, and we're trying to kind of be more personalized, and we're obviously biased here, but I think that's like the convergence of marketing and sales. Like this has been a trend that's been going on for a long time, and I think it speaks to kind of the best practices and strategies you're really articulating here today. And the product marketer. Maybe that's one of the reasons why there's former salespeople that really make great product marketers. We were just chatting about that, one of our episodes of the podcast this week around that, right? So that's one of the things that really comes to mind. I also had a question about sort of the asset, and that you use a salesperson, and the kind of balance between personalization and branding, right? And the kind of the pretty stuff, right? Like I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this, because on one side, I think to myself, boy, if the asset is pretty, but it's not personalized and it's like generic and high level, then, it's not going to be as impactful or relevant to the prospect. On the other side, if it looks like, like a Notion page, or, something in like out of a Word doc with no branding, design, etc., it does tend to reflect as not as polished, as professional. So like, how do we actually like find that balance in your perspective? Do you sort of like lean to either side?
So first of all, I think when even like on the, like brand story, or like, like the company's like POV, these should not be generic, like in any way. Like if they're generic, like you have a way deeper problem, like way before whether or not you're using like a relevant case study, or like, like you have to take like 10 steps back. And it kind of ties to what we talked about at the beginning, right? Like when you really know your audience, and when you know the use cases that you're solving. So maybe you have a deck for each of the use cases, like that's totally fine. I would still call that as like a one-to-many though, but like like a what, like even that type of asset, like it needs to feel specific to that person, because again, like you're not going after the entire market. Like you're not Salesforce. Typically, most of us aren't Salesforce. So you do have to really hone in when you do the positioning work itself on your POV and the market expertise that you're going to bring to the table, like right out of the gate. Like before they even had a conversation with you, like you really have to make sure that that part is sharp. And then I think the personalization part, it is important. But you can kind of build into those pieces, and you can, make these pieces like more modular. So like, for example, like if you're, we're talking about like a sales deck, but so if it's, like if you want to feature a case study there, which, you probably should, or like some results that that you have, or like that your product delivered to your customers, you want to make sure that these are relevant at least, right? Like if you have a case study of a company in a similar size or use case or industry or something like that, like for sure use that, versus just like, let's create like one version of that slide that we use forever. Like I feel, but I feel like that part, like most teams are pretty good about, like they have kind of like a bank of different types of industries or sizes or use cases, and like they're pretty good about like picking and choosing like the right ones. But I think like in more, like even like in other assets, when you go and you talk to a specific persona, like again, like in the buying committee, like you want to use a quote or something, use quotes of someone in a role that's similar to theirs. And then maybe the industry doesn't matter as much, but the role actually does matter. Like the KPIs that you choose to surface or your spin on them really makes a difference. So you like there is a balance, right? Like you can't tailor every possible maybe sales deck, because maybe you don't have that many case studies and and KPIs, but you can at least, I think, bring it like 85% closer to where they are. And it's again, like it's all about being specific as much as you can without like reinventing and rewriting your entire story every single time. Because no, like if your story is good, your story should be like elastic enough that you can kind of put like a slightly different spin to it, and it still like makes sense.
Awesome. I feel like we could have continued to talk for hours here today, but sadly, I think we're up on time. First of all, Talia, thank you so much for your time. For the folks out there who tuned in, really appreciate you making the time to learn about this incredible topic and meet Talia, because Talia is awesome. If you are a AssetMule user or customer, thank you so much for doing so. If not, check it out. It's AssetMule.ai. You can sign up. And Talia, what are the best kind of places for folks to follow you, learn more about your content? I know folks are watching this on YouTube, but are there any other URLs that might be awesome in case folks want to hire you too?
So LinkedIn is kind of my main hub. If folks want to, beyond that, like beyond the content that I post there all the time, if they want to learn more about what I do, my website, downtoat.co. There's also, for folks who just want to learn, there's a bunch of like resources and things like that there. So check it out. And if you really want to go into like the deeper parts of the soul of me, of like what kind of like how my brain works, what inspires me, I also just launched a newsletter probably like less than a couple of months ago. It's called Spill the Tea, because I like all the bad puns and I own it. So you can find a link to subscribe to that on the website as well.
Awesome. I've really been enjoying it, by the way. I think I was one of the ones that was fortunate enough to get a first glance of it when you were first launching it, and it's been awesome. I've read every issue so far, and it's been really, really entertaining and informative.
Yeah, it's the little things around us that, you know, we can find inspiration in. I really don't think that, you know, it's just like B2B or it's just SaaS. It's like, no, it's for like good GTM is actually all around us. So these are kind of like the random examples that I like to bring forward.
Awesome. Well, Talia, thank you so much. And for the folks out there, if you like the content, go ahead and click on subscribe on YouTube or follow us here on LinkedIn, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.